This is the new ASUS Vivobook 14 Flip, a versatile 2-in-1 laptop that makes me wonder, how can one device do it all? It's great for those who want productivity, it's great for artists, it's good for Netflix addicts, and it's even good for casual gamers. Now, if you're wondering how is that possible, well, let me tell you in this video. If you're here for the first time, I'm Arshad, you're watching Trakin Tech English, your destination for detailed, incisive gadget reviews. Now, when you talk about the design, the Vivobook Flip 14 is actually 1.69 centimeters thick, 6'9", and it is also about 1.5 kilograms in weight. Now, for a 2-in-1 laptop, this is easily one of the most premium and compact machines that I've used, and there are two reasons for it. Firstly, it's built really well, so the top lid is made of aluminum, and you get military standard 8108 certification as well. Now, if you ask me, there is a little bit of a top lid flex and a keyboard flex which could have been minimized, but still, I feel like if you don't batter it, it should really be durable enough. Another reason why the Vivobook Flip 14 is actually good is because of the hinge that they've used for the 2-in-1. And one of the problems that I have with most 2-in-1 laptops is that the hinge is generally not engineered really well, so you cannot open the lid with one finger, which is not a problem with this machine. And the best part is the resistance of the hinge. You get the same resistance for the entire 360-degree motion of the display itself. And the level of resistance is just rightly tuned for it to not feel too tight or too loose. Good job, ASUS. As for the port situations, all of the useful, important ports are here. There is no problem there. You also do get a Thunderbolt 4 port, which is good, but oddly enough, there is a micro SD card slot here. Now, considering micro SD cards are not being used too often, we would have expected a full-sized SD card slot, which would have been better considering most cameras and other equipment use a full-size slot. So depending on what your use case is, this could be a problem or won't really matter to you. Now, while the Vivobook 14 Flip is a 2-in-1 machine, it actually has 4 different modes that you can use it in. So you've got the standard laptop mode, there's a tent mode, there's a stand mode, and there is, of course, the tablet mode. Now, all of these 4 modes have a different purpose to serve, and let me explain how you can use each one of these modes, right? So starting off with the laptop mode, where you can use this machine as a laptop. Duh. Of course, in this mode, you have access to the keyboard and the trackpad. And talking about the keyboard and the trackpad, you get the ASUS Ergo keyboard and the Ergo Sense trackpad. Now, branding aside, the keyboard and the trackpad itself are pretty good. So with the keyboard, you get a fairly decent amount of travel. There is good spacing between the keys as well, so typing experience is actually pretty good. And you get white backlighting too. And as for the trackpad, it's pretty big. It's not massive, but it's pretty big and definitely very responsive to your touch. And since this is an Ergo Sense trackpad, you can swipe up or down at the left of the trackpad or the right of the trackpad to actually change the volume or the brightness levels. In fact, you can also scrub a YouTube video by swiping up at the top. By the way, in the laptop mode, ASUS uses something called ASUS Adaptive Lock. Now, essentially what this does is, even if you have the lid open and you walk away and you're not using a machine, it automatically detects that your machine is not in use and puts it in sleep mode so that, you can save battery life. The next mode is the stand mode, and this is perfect for when you're watching content. Essentially, you need to flip the lid like 200 degrees and the keyboard then becomes inaccessible. It's a fun mode for if you're watching, video content like YouTube or Netflix, because your laptop's display is right up front. Also, because your downward firing speakers turn into upward firing speakers. Now, you can also use the ASUS Pen 2.0 to write on the display if you're using the laptop in the stand mode, but it's actually not something that I would recommend, primarily because there's a little bit of a wobble that you'll have to deal with. For that, I have a different mode, and I'll come to that in a bit. Also, I'll talk a little bit more about the ASUS Pen 2.0 really soon. The next mode is a tent mode, where you actually flip the display and use the laptop as a tent. It's like this inverted V shape that gets formed. It's not necessarily my favorite mode of use, but one area where it could come in handy is if you want to use your laptop as a separate wireless display for your PC. Now, I know a lot of folks who actually do use their laptop as a secondary display, which is kind of weird, but if you want to do that, then you can use this laptop in the tent mode. Also, if you want to know how to actually connect your laptop as a wireless display with 2 Windows machines, then do let us know in the comments so that we can actually make a tips and tricks video for Windows. And finally, you have the tablet mode, where you completely flip the display 360 degrees, and the keyboard is at the bottom and the tablet is at the display is at the top. And in this mode, of course, it turns into a tablet, and the display's touchscreen then becomes accessible to you, and you can use the ASUS Pen 2.0 there. Now is the time for me to talk about the Pen 2.0, because this is the mode that most graphic designers and artists will actually use the pen with, right? The one good thing about the laptop is that it is powerful enough to run apps like Photoshop or Lightroom room with ease, and you can use this pen with those apps and even other professional tools because there's very little latency between the touch response of the pen and the display. The other good thing about the Pen 2.0 is that it is pressure sensitive, so artists will definitely appreciate that. And I'm sure that artists will also appreciate the fact that you get 2 buttons that will let you switch between different tools. It charges via USB-C and you get 3 extra tips as well. The best part is, it also comes inside the box, by the way, free. By the way, one thing to note here is that the laptop mode is the only mode where the keyboard and the trackpad are accessible. In all the other modes, the keyboard and the trackpad are disabled automatically by ASUS's software itself, which is damn nice. And the good thing is that Windows also automatically switches from desktop mode to tablet mode, especially when you're using it as a tablet. Alright, now talking about the display, it's a 14-inch panel, it's a WUXGA resolution, which is basically 1200p, and it's an ASUS Lumina OLED panel with an aspect ratio of 16:10. The good thing about ASUS Lumina OLED panels is that it is Pantone validated. You get 100% DCI-P3 color gamut support, and you get 500 nits of peak brightness as well. It's actually a very color accurate display, and we've been trusting it for our camera comparison videos. Otherwise, we generally use like an Apple MacBook or an iMac display, but when it comes to ASUS machines, we can actually trust its color. You also get VESA Display HDR 500 certification with Netflix HDR and YouTube HDR support, and HDR video playback on this is actually pretty good. And of course, I did also mention a touchscreen, right? So yeah, you can use the display as a touchscreen, and the touchscreen response is very well calibrated. You also get an ASUS AI webcam, which is FHD webcam along with IR sensors. So basically, because of that, you also get Windows Hello support as well, and it works well. Now, while the display itself is very good, the speakers could have been better in our opinion. The problem is these are downward firing speakers, and whenever you crank up the volume to anything over 70%, and there's a little bit of crackle that you will hear. I think because of all the space saving stuff that ASUS has had to do with the build and design of this machine, they might have nerfed the speakers a little bit. Alright, now it's time to talk about the internal specs. What you get is the Intel Core Ultra 7 256V, which has 8 cores and 8 threads. Apart from this, you also get 16GB of LPDDR5X RAM type, 512GB of PCI Express storage with great read-write speeds, by the way. Now, after testing the Core Ultra 7 256V, we realized that it's basically the Core Ultra 7 258V, but with reduced RAM support. That's all. We could also make this deduction because in Cinebench R23 benchmark and Geekbench 6 benchmark, both these processors actually perform very similarly, and you get similar scores as well. However, in R24, the 256V's scores were slightly lower than that of the 258V, and that could be because of the reduced RAM support. Now, like I mentioned, you can also do some casual gaming on this, so if you're playing games like GTA 5 or Valorant at default resolution and low settings, then that should be possible. So GTA 5 was running at around, the mid 50s, which is not too bad, and Valorant runs at 250 to 300 FPS. By the way, for disclaimer, to check all the benchmarks and to do gaming testing, we actually ran it in best performance mode, and we also switched the fan profile to full speed. And even when we did this, the laptop didn't get too hot, which is kind of nice, especially considering the small form factor that it has. Another good thing is that despite having such a small form factor, it manages to cram in a 70 watt-hour battery. And when it comes to battery life, this thing really delivers. So one of the things that we loved about it is that the idle drain or the overnight drain was very little. We expected about 3 to 5%, but it was only 1%. In fact, even the battery life was pretty good. We are getting about 12 to 13 hours of screen on time in our usage for, basically which involved a lot of browsing, a lot of researching and writing scripts, and of course even some very light Lightroom editing as well. Yes, even when we were using Lightroom, we didn't plug it in just to check the battery life. Now, since this is an AI PC, you also do get an NPU with 47 TOPS of power at your disposal. Now, what this means is that Microsoft Copilot runs absolutely fine. It's a Microsoft Copilot Plus certified PC. In fact, you even get the button. Now, like I mentioned, with these different modes and with Flip with ASUS AI, your productivity is improved, you can be more creative, and your user experience across the various modes sort of gets better and better. Plus, with the ASUS StoryCube app, you can actually use AI to organize your photos as well. By the way, you also get a very clean installation of Windows with zero third-party bloatware pre-installed, and there are 5 ASUS apps that are installed. And all of these 5 ASUS apps that are pre-installed are also uninstallable, which is nice. Now, as I mentioned at the start, this 2-in-1 machine is great for productivity, it's great for multimedia, and even some light gaming. The Vivobook 14 Flip has surprised the hell heck out of me. It's actually a very good 2-in-1 machine. By the way, if you're wondering about the price, ASUS has also done a good job with it, considering the fact that they've actually managed to price it under a lakh. Basically, you can buy it for 96,000 rupees, which I think is value for money for a 2-in-1. By the way, what do you guys think of the 2-in-1 form factor? Are you even considering buying a machine like this, and why would that be, and what would the reason for that be? Let me know in the comments. So that's it from me for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, keep tracking and stay safe.